What's up, everybody? Welcome inside the MRN studios. It is time again for another episode of NASCAR Coast to Coast, brought to you by Whelen Engineering, manufactured in America for over 70 years. Whelen Engineering. As always, Chris Williams, pit reporter, and joining me again from Stafford Speedway, MRN announcer Kyle Rickey. Rick, I don't see any raindrops. It must mean you guys avoided the rain finally this weekend. Was Senators Cup this weekend over there at Stafford Speedway. I heard you had to outrun Mother Nature. You guys did it and got it in the books.
We did. Do you know why there's no raindrops?
Why?
Because it's not race day. It seems to only rain on race day here at the racetrack, but and it rained last Friday, but we were able to complete the Casella Waste Open 80 for the Open Modifieds, a race that started 3 weeks ago now before it was interrupted by rain. We have the Senators Cup for the SK Modifieds, a special 50-lap event for our Premier Division, and both were won by Mike Christopher Jr. Both beat out Mother Nature. It rained here really hard between 5 and 6:30, but the track was so warm because of the daytime heat. It dried fairly quickly, and we were green by 8 o'clock. So a great night, and kudos to the Arute family here at the racetrack for sticking with it and getting the entire race program in.
Absolutely. I know everybody pretty much in this half of the country had to battle the heat as well as the conditions. I know up at Watkins Glen for IMSA, we had 90-degree weather and rain and storms. I know, obviously, Loudon, New Hampshire had their issues and got the Cup race in, but it's about to be the hottest day in Charlotte today. Heat index 100 degrees, so we're in the gauntlet of the summer schedule, and we're also in the gauntlet of racing in the NASCAR Regional Series, and it's been another busy weekend of action. Of course, speaking of New Hampshire, that is where we will start with our highlights of the weekend. The NASCAR Whelen Modified Tour Mohegan Sun 100 at the Magic Mile, and it was a family affair with Justin Bonsignor holding off Kyle Bonsignor to score his 42nd Tour win, tying himself with Ted Christopher in the most all-time wins in Tour Series history. Kyle, that racetrack is always fun whenever we get the tour there, of course, kind of pack racing, almost like super speedway style. But what were your thoughts on the Kyle versus Justin battle there at the end?
Yeah, it was a great race, start to finish. And again, a great move by the racetrack in NASCAR to take that event, move it from a 6:45 p.m. start on Saturday night to a 10 a.m. start on Saturday morning. Again, because of Mother Nature and all the wet weather up here in the Northeast. But a great race there at the end of the event, in the last 20, 25 laps or so. It looked like Justin and Kyle were going to get away from the field, but a couple of late race cautions prevented that. They were able to duel amongst each other in the closing laps, and Justin picked up the race win by about a car length over the rest of the pack, including his cousin Kyle. Big day for Justin Bonsignor. Started off the day with a win and then found himself in the NASCAR Xfinity Series race later that afternoon, running for Joe Gibbs Racing, and raced among the top 5 for a lot of that event before getting caught up in a restart incident over in turn number 2. But a big day, no doubt a day that he'll remember for the rest of his life. For sure, and those results in the Xfinity race not indicative of the talent and the speed that JGR car had with Justin behind the wheel. I think easily would have been another top 10 story in kind of our streak of regional drivers getting top 10s on the national stage. So hopefully Justin gets another opportunity for sure, but congratulations to him. Win number 3 on the season on the modified side of things in the Tour Series, and of course trying to keep track with Ron Silk. Silk finished 8th, kind of almost a non-factor for much of the race, but he still holds a 16-point lead over Jay Bonsignor as we go into the duel at the Dog 250 at Monadnock, one of my favorite races on the schedule, coming up in just a little less than a month, July 20th. They've got a little bit of a break for sure. And Ryan Preece, also, you're probably wondering, why aren't we talking about him? Well, he was off the pace pretty early in that race, had some mechanical issues as well. Kyle, there was also some action at Mid-Ohio Sports Car Course, the ARCA Menard Series, Zinsser Smart Coat 150 for our ARCA Menard Series National Tour. And we've had some drama, and somehow William Sawalich and the Pinnacle Racing Group number 28 seem to always find each other. Not only did they have some on-track kind of beating and banging, there was controversy at the finish with Connor Mosack being dubbed as jumping the restart there in the final restart with a handful of laps left, giving the win to William Sawalich. Connor stayed out there to protest. I would have as well. Saw the black flag, didn't care, but William Sawalich giving the win. First off, let's get your thoughts on the restart. We've seen the replays on Flow Racing several times. I don't think he jumped it, but what's your perspective? I've watched it several times. I've watched it in slow motion, trying to figure out what was wrong with the restart. When it comes down to that, it's like we're splitting hairs. It's like, I didn't see anything wrong with the restart that we saw at the end of that race. It looked like restarts that we saw all weekend and we have seen all year in the ARCA Menard series. Not sure if there was a penalty or a warning before that, but even if there was, I didn't see a violation coming to that green flag. It looked clean on both lanes going into that first left-hander turn one. So I don't know. I didn't see it. And I'm not sure. I'm not quite sure what the tower saw, but.
Well, and it's also, too, it's tough. It's not a NASCAR weekend, right? So ARCA was out there kind of on their own as the headliner. So we don't have those high-speed cameras that NASCAR brings to all the National Series races. They need them. Yeah, for sure. I mean, if you looked at it, I think so. Because if you had another perspective, the restart zone there is weird. Off the final corner at Mid-Ohio, start-finish, I mean, you're looking way deep down at an angle. The officials in the tower are not exactly even with the restart zone either. They have kind of not obstructed, but really an awkward angle.
Like an angled view.
Yeah, and so I just think it's one of those things that if you just had a little more technology, maybe they would look at and say, oh, okay, from our perspective, the nose of that 28 was gone by the line, but really they were about a foot off each other, and we deem that a legal restart. I don't know. I'm just spitballing ideas, but certainly what is done is done. Connor Mosack tried to appeal it by running the finish and winning the race technically by crossing the start-finish line first, but William Sawalich gets the win. But let's talk about Brent Cruz really quick. Dominant car for much of that race. Finished in the top three. Of course, one of the youngsters bursting on the scene. He's been doing a lot of TA2 Trans Am stuff that's been helping on the road course. Of course, a champion last year, but when is it going to be Brent Cruz's turn to maybe get a shot? Maybe, I don't know, in a truck series start? I mean, I feel like, in the Toyota pipeline, he'd be the next obvious choice as a young gun to kind of get an opportunity, especially maybe on the road courses with the kind of talent that he's had here of late.
Yeah, I was just going to say that we have a lot of road courses now sprinkled throughout the National Series of NASCAR. The Xfinity Series, mainly the trucks, not as much, although we're hearing that may change next. Stay tuned. But yeah, there's a lot of opportunity out there for Brent. I'd like to see him at least get a opportunity that some of these other young drivers have been getting over the course of the first half of this season. And, probably on a road course, I think that's where he would shine and probably garner the most attention his first National Series start. But, we'll see. We'll see if there's any open rides coming up. I know Bristol's another popular place at the end of the summer for drivers to make their debut in especially a truck. So a lot of opportunity out there. We'll see if he can get one here before the end of the year because he's doing a bang-up job in the ARCA Menard series at all different types of racetracks, especially the road courses.
Absolutely. Gio Ruggiero finished third. Marco Andretti got a top five. I mean, we were kind of waiting to see if his transition to stock car racing was going to, fulfill to something. And I know they have struggled a little bit with that 17 Group 1001 machine, but he got a top five finish, which was huge, and obviously road course veteran on the IndyCar side of things, so really cool to see. Connor Daly, speaking of IndyCar, was in the field. Many people forgot about that. He comes away with the top 10 as well. But when you look at this championship, I mean, it's hard, right? You've got Andres Perez, who continues to lead over Greg Van Alst. The last check of the points, 33, he's over Greg Van Alst, but at the same time, you almost need a race that you don't have an East invader like William Sawalich or Gio Ruggiero, Connor Zilisch, Brent Cruz, because none of these guys have gotten a win yet this year because they've been stolen by all the East Series guys. So how do you combat that when you're points racing on the national schedule?
Yeah, I guess you just do what Andres Perez is doing, stay consistent, do as best as you can, and if you can't win, settle for second, third, fourth place, whatever it might be behind the East drivers or the non-ARCA National Series regulars, because you're right. All of the races thus far have been won by drivers that don't run the series full time. But Perez is doing exactly what he needs to do to at least win a championship. Hopefully, though, he can get a win before all is said and done, because wouldn't it be something if we had a champion at the end of the year that didn't win a race? It's been a while since we have seen that. I'm not sure if we have ever seen that in the ARCA Menard series.
Yeah, 100%. Storylines continue to follow. And, of course, Andres Perez has had so much success on the NASCAR Mexico schedule leading the series. And then he comes over here, and it's been a struggle to find victory lane. But, again, consistency sometimes pays off. So we'll have to see what happens with them. Of course, they're coming up this weekend, ending a grueling 3-weekend stretch. Berlin Raceway. Of course, our guest this week, Jeff Striegle. We will talk to him a little bit about that as that weekend approaches. Some other winners this weekend on my schedule. Kyle Ryan Kuhn got capitalized on a little on-track kerfuffle, as I want to call it, between DJ Shaw and Derek Griffith, winning the pass race, the 150 out at Star Speedway this weekend. John Bolin held off Jake Finch, who we've had on the show this week in the Show Me the Money Pro Late Model event at Montgomery. And shout out to Landon Huffman. We had him on the show last year a lot. Obviously took a step aside from the full-time Cars late model stock tour this year after getting splitting ways with Nelson Motorsports, been running primarily Hickory. Finally got himself back in victory lane in his own family car once again at Tri-County Speedway. I know it's been a lot of work for that team to get back to where they wanted to be, so shout out to Landon Huffman. Kyle, am I missing anybody?
I don't think so. I think you covered it all because everything else up here, at least on this part of the country, and it was supposed to be a full weekend of racing around New Hampshire, got rained out. So unfortunately, for like the second or third week in a row, but I know a lot of the tracks down south were able to complete their race programs and out west as well. But I think you got them all, at least all the big ones.
You guys all got rained out. Meanwhile, the grass is dead down here in Charlotte, North Carolina, because it has not rained in quite a long time, and it has been scorching hot. So crazy stuff here. All right, we're going to step aside real quick, take a quick time out. Coming up next after the break, Jeff Striegle, motor racing anchor for the Cup Series coverage on the Motor Racing Network, and of course, general manager at Berlin Raceway. We're going to talk things in post Money in the Bank, ARCA this weekend, and of course, looming on the horizon is the battle at Berlin. We'll talk to Jeff about it all coming up next here on NASCAR Coast to Coast, brought to you by Whelen Engineering.
Whelen Engineering, a global leader in the emergency warning industry, designs and manufactures reliable and powerful warning lights, white illumination lighting, sirens, controllers, and warning systems for the automotive, aviation, and mass notification industries worldwide. Whelen products are designed, sourced, and manufactured in America and tested on site to meet the toughest industry standards. Whelen Engineering, manufactured in America for over 70 years. We never left, and we're here to stay.
Welcome back to NASCAR Coast to Coast, brought to you by Whelen Engineering, manufactured in America for over 70 years. Whelen Engineering. Joining us now on the phone, it is Motor Racing Network anchor on the NASCAR Cup Series coverage, and of course, general manager of Berlin Raceway, Mr. Jeff Striegle. Striegy, good to hear from you, my friend. I know you've got a little bit of time off from MRN this week, but you guys are gearing up for a huge ARCA night in America out there, Berlin, this weekend. You guys ready for it?
We are ready for it. Good morning, Chris, and hello to Kyle. Yeah, we're ready for it. This is an annual trip to the Berlin Raceway, something that we have looked forward to year after year after year. It's something that, Chris, it dates back so far. There was some breaks in that, but ARCA has been coming to Berlin Raceway since ARCA was ARCA. And, this time we got some new names. We got one familiar name in there, Kyle, and that's William Sawalich. So he will come in as the defending race winner. And I think we would all agree that he also comes in as the man to beat, without a doubt.
Fresh off a win just less than a week ago at the Mid-Ohio Sports Car Course. Did well in Portland a couple of weeks back as well. As far as the track manager position, how is prepping for an ARCA Menard Series event different than from a weekly show? Obviously, we here at Stafford host several touring divisions every year. The prep is a little bit different than just the normal, race program. Is there much of a difference as you guys get ready to go this weekend with ARCA?
There's some, for sure, Kyle, and you just, you hit the nail on the head there by saying that, with what you do at Stafford, you see that, week in and week out. Everything is a little different, isn't it? I mean, even if it's an outside touring series, a wing sprint car compared to a super late model, it's always just a little bit different. And with ARCA, this is going to be shown on FS1 I do know that they are going to also live stream on Flow, so we're working with them from a broadcast standpoint. Obviously, we have a little different deal with them showing up with ARCA hard cards, and, not people typically going through the main ticket office. You got the big rigs in there compared to some of the, the standard super late haulers. So you're trying to make sure that we got enough room to park, when the Venturinis come rolling in there with their four great big haulers. So it's a little bit different, but then again, it's also, there's a lot of the same, when you open and how you're going to treat the fans.
And Jeff, too, when you kind of look at it, you've got, you had the Money in the Bank about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. There's a turnaround to then running weekly scheduled races and then ARCA. What is the prep? What does that look like when you have a series or a huge event like Money in the Bank that leaves? You got to get the racetrack turned back around and then now prepare for ARCA coming up this weekend.
You know how I'm going to answer that, Chris? And please, I want everybody to make sure they understand and take this the right way. I have to share with our team that we have a big event every single week. There are tracks all over the nation, and God bless those tracks that run the four cylinders and the pro stocks and the bombers, and that's their lineup, and good for them. And the people show up, and they're there to see those drivers race every single weekend. For us, and Kyle, you're a little bit, similar in this nature. We run a great big super late model race. Then we turn around and we have a great big outlaw late model race. The following week we have ARCA. The following week we have wing sprint cars. The following week we have non-wing sprint cars. The week after that we've got the East Coast super modifieds coming in. We have modifieds. I mean, it's a big show every weekend, and then you throw in there that our regular division is super late models every other Saturday night, mixed in with our limited late models on, the opposite Saturday night. So it's a little crazy. Sometimes you go, is this the right way to do it? Because, we're always trying to look far enough down the line, but at the same time, you also don't want to confuse the fan. It's like, okay, I don't even know what's racing at Berlin next week. If they think that, hopefully they think I might not know what's racing there, but I know it's going to be big.
And I think I saw recently you guys have ISMA coming to town, one of my favorite race cars, the Super Modifieds.
I wish you would join me up here on July 12th and 13th, Kyle.
Me too.
They are coming. That's going to be a big show. I'm hearing, we had a big show the last 2 years. This is the third annual Great Lakes Classic. Mike Ordway Jr. and Kyle Edwards have been the two guys to beat the last 2 years. But McVetta will be here. Trent Stevens will be here. Trent's already won it at Oswego. Dave Schulich is coming. Tyler Schulich is coming. I mean, it's big names, and I'm hoping that we will be able to announce a couple more big names that will be coming once, Kyle, they get through Oswego this weekend, because that's their last show that they have before Berlin.
Big events, Jeff, throughout the year for you guys as far as on track, but also some pretty big drivers that have kind of come through and cut their teeth at Berlin Raceway before moving on to the big national stage. It comes to mind Carson Hocevar, Eric Jones. You've got to watch both of those drivers practically grow up. For someone like you who then covers them from the broadcast booth on Sundays, what is it like and what are your memories of them driving as kids and kind of learning the craft of racing and racing there at Berlin before making the big time?
Watching them mature, I think, Chris. I remember the first time we ever saw Carson. I'll use him as the example. He showed up there with Johnny Benson Jr., and he was there in an outlaw late model at the age of 12, and we just thought, this is insane. I mean, this kid get out of the car, Carson Hocevar, and walk around and kick rocks like any 12-year-old kid would do walking up and down pit road. And then, Johnny would say, okay, get your helmet. It's time to go run some more laps. And he'd climb in, and we'd all look at the stopwatch and go, did he really just run, a 14-second lap around Berlin Raceway? And then climb out of the car and go grab a football and start playing catch, and then get back in the car. And, from there, he progressed into super late models, and he won his first race there at Berlin. And if you remember, he won that race at age 13, and we're a NASCAR sanctioned track, and it's public now. But when that hit, Chris, it went nationwide that this 13-year-old kid won a super late model race at Berlin. Well, on Monday, NASCAR called us and said, this Carson Hocevar kid, how old is he? We said he's 13. And they go, well, you do know he's got to be 14 in order to run under the NASCAR sanction. He is no longer eligible to be able to run the remainder of the year, so he had to sit out. And he went and raced other tracks, but then he came back, obviously, and the rest is history. But I think, Kyle, you can, weigh in on just watching kids mature from the time they're young teens into their middle teens until they make it on the big stage, like we're watching Eric do right now.
And it helps here at Stafford, where we have our karting program on Monday night, and about 70% of our Friday night drivers started when they were 5, 6, 7, 8 years old in karting on Monday, and then they kind of go up through the ranks on Monday night, end up in a late model or a modified on Friday, and it's really hard to get to the national division, but we've seen it done with Ryan Preece more recently and Justin Bonsignor this weekend, and Glenn Reen was in the Xfinity Series field this past weekend, so it can be done. But you're right, it is fun to watch drivers so young kind of figure this sport out one step at a time, and ultimately land up as track champions, and then hopefully maybe able to kind of spread their wings and go in and compete in either the ARCA Menard Series full-time or in full-time NASCAR competition.
Well, I think we're also watching, and I'll just throw in Katie Hettinger.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously this is a family and a driver that is dedicated on making it to the next level. There's no doubt about that. I mean, you watch her progression. I watched her race. She's been to Berlin a few times, not a ton. She doesn't have a ton of laps there. She got to Berlin for Money in the Bank, and practice-wise was not real good. Didn't qualify real good. In fact, I think she qualified 23rd. But then to stand there and watch, and you could tell the more she ran laps, the more comfortable she got. And next thing you know, she's running inside the top 20. Then she's inside the top 15. Then she's running 10th. And I'm thinking, we're watching, arguably one of the, if not the best young talents that is going, I don't think there's any doubt we're going to see her in a truck sooner than later in the truck series. And how far she goes is going to obviously be up to the talent, and hopefully that continues to progress. But I think we all enjoy trying to watch what we think could be the next Carson Hocevar, the next Eric Jones, the next Justin Bonsignor, the next Ryan Preece. Every track's got them. They just, as we all know, they just need that break. They need the seat time. They need some financial backing. And if they can get that, we might be watching them on Saturdays and Sundays at the Cup level or Xfinity level, or certainly in the trucks.
Absolutely. And Jeff, that kind of led me to my next question. Looking at, even just the drivers you have on your weekly super late model, limited late model, and so forth schedule, who has been sticking out this year? Obviously, we talk about the big events and the super modifieds and everybody that's coming up on the schedule. But as far as your weekly program, anybody sticking out to you here in 2024?
Well, as far as, like a home track driver, I really think Evan Shotko is a super talent. This is a kid, let's use Mark Martin as an example. Mark Martin is a driver that grew up, as we all know, working on his own race cars. And he would get out of a race car and he would change a spring, he would change a shock, he would do all of the adjustments. And even today, when you talk to him, he can tell you, I know this for a fact because he did it with me, he can tell you the shocks and spring package that he brought with him and raced at Berlin back in the late 70s, in the early 80s. He can tell you what he had on that race car. Okay, the point that I'm making is that those drivers now are rare. You know, we typically see drivers get in and out of race cars, and they've got guys and gals that work on those cars and set them up. Evan Shotko is a kid. He's 20 years old. I don't even think he's 21 yet. He builds his own race cars. He wins with his own race cars. And not only does he have a ton of talent behind the wheel, and I truly believe he could go anywhere and win, but he's also building now some of the fastest cars in super late model division. So I'm proud of him. You know, I ask him where he wants to go. Does he want to race at the truck level? And he'll tell you, no, not really. I can tell you that he's had offers from teams to come and work, you know, at some of the big, you know, NASCAR teams. And he says, I don't really want to do that either. He goes, I want to build super late models. I want to build them and have people around the country driving a Shotco Motorsports super late model. I think, you know what, this kid's got his future planned out. How it works out for him in the future, we don't know. You know, one day at a time, one step at a time. But, you know, just looking at a kid that has talent behind the wheel and talent in the garage, Evan Shotko is certainly a kid that's at the top of my list.
One of the many, I'm sure, on-track stories there at Berlin. I think one of the other big stories that involves a lot of short tracks this year has been Mother Nature. Has she been kind to you? Because she hasn't been all that kind up here at Stafford.
I'll answer that question for you on Monday. We got off to a great start, Kyle. I think we went for a record. I mean, we start in Michigan middle of April. Our opening night, the feel-like temperature was 34 degrees. I mean, it was awful. It was just terrible. But it was also sunny. So the only reason we would have pulled the plug is because it was just too cold, and we thought, you know what, this is opening night. And the fans packed it. We did not have a rain out all the way through the months of April and May, which has never happened before at Berlin. But we never had great weather, if that makes sense. It was never blue sky, sunshine, 75 degrees. We were always battling something. And then we ran into Mother Nature and rain. And we've rained out twice. We've got ARCA coming in this weekend. They're calling for rain Saturday morning into the afternoon. We do have the jet dryer at the track, so we do plan to run. If the weather holds the way it is right now, we should be good to go on Saturday. But, Kyle, you're right. I mean, you make your best plans, and you've got everything ready to go, and then you're looking at, you know, the radar, and you can see the rain moving in, or it's cloudy, or it's cold. And I don't know. That's just something we all face every single weekend.
Yep.
And Jeff, I know too, we talk about the great racing and obviously, you know, the different series that come to your racetrack. But I know what always impresses me with what you guys do is you take care of the race fan. And you prioritize their experience, whether it's, you know, the different events at racing events, whether it's the concerts, the after parties. It seems like, you know, the entertainment level is second to none when you look at our NASCAR regional, you know, NASCAR home track. So what has that experience been like? First of all, how was the party at Money in the Bank, and is it going to get a little, you know, bigger when we get to Battle at Berlin here in about a month?
We always ramp it up, Chris. I mean, you know, that's the problem with being a competitive nature individual. If we did something good one night, I want it to be better the next night. And if that went well, then I want it to be better the following. And you just never give up on that. You know, we learned from the Cup Series. I remember several years ago being at Michigan International Speedway, and in knowing the folks there, we were just standing around and chatting about the weekend, and the comment was made that they have 70 things to do that weekend for their race fans. All right, what were they? They were a variety of different music concerts. They were going to shoot somebody out of a cannon. They had face painting. They had things going on in the concourse and the midway. And by the time they added all those things up, they had 70. And the comment was made that people don't show up at a racetrack anymore today just simply to watch cars go around the racetrack, that you've got to provide more things for the fans to do, whether they're kids, whether they're the old timers that have been going to the track forever, new families, you have to add. So, that wasn't lost on me. And I thought, you know what, if I ever had the opportunity to work and run a racetrack, that's something I need to keep in mind. And so and I know, you guys are doing that at Stafford, Kyle. I know you are. We see that you're always looking for something that will enhance or entice a new fan to come and bring a child. So whether it be face painting or bounce houses or, this promotion or that promotion, Chris, you're always just trying to look at something that's a little different, a little new, that might bring a fan out to the racetrack for the fun. And you know what? If they enjoy the races and what we put on the racetrack, they'll be back the following week.
Final question for you, at least from me. Want to talk about the national side of things and your involvement with the Motor Racing Network as the lead anchor. And it's a simple question. You're ready to go for this summer stretch here when you get back at it here on the streets of Chicago in just over a week from now?
Yeah, absolutely, Kyle. This is really when things start to ramp up and get exciting. I love Chicago. I think everybody that was a part of that event, even with what we had to deal with there, we talked about Mother Nature. I think they got 7-8 inches of rain, unprecedented, but we were able to get the show in, cut it short, first-time winner with Shane Van Gisbergen. That was cool. But I think even more important than that is we start getting into that playoff run now. So every race becomes that much more. They're all important, but as we know, as we get closer and closer to Daytona, every race becomes even more important to some of these drivers, either just above or below the cut line. So I'm looking forward to it. We got a little time off, and we'll enjoy it thanks to the Olympic break. But when we come back, it'll be Michigan, Richmond, Daytona, then right on into the playoffs.
Absolutely. It's all gas, no brake after that point, that's for sure. Jeff, before we let you go, too, obviously this week we've had huge news, really the last couple of weeks, starting with the Stewart-Haas Racing news, and now the one charter going to be the Haas factory team. Of course, Chase Briscoe yesterday finally officially being known that he's going to be in the 19 car in 2025. Where do you see the sport in the Cup Series now in terms of the ever-evolving kind of business model and kind of where we're at? With all this change going on, it's kind of hard to believe it's all kind of seems like it's happening at once. But as you kind of have a bird's eye view of the sport, where are we at as a Cup Series in terms of change and kind of moving the sport kind of for the next generation?
Well, first of all, Chris, I think change is good. I think there are times when people don't want to embrace change. I mean, we can go back and look at how the sport has evolved and where we're racing today compared to where we were racing just, 5, 10, 15 years ago. I'm excited about the change that we believe is coming when they announce the new Cup Series schedule, and we expect to see that now at any time where we may be headed in 2025. There's a lot of rumors out there. Some of them I believe, some of them I'll believe if I see it. Do I like that Stewart-Haas went out of business as that entity? No, I don't, because there's such an amazing group of people, and they have meant so much for pointed out, it's allowed for fragmented and growth in other areas. Chase Briscoe is going to have the opportunity to drive the 19 car. I guess we would all agree that you can't really get into a better car than that one. So for Chase Briscoe, he's got to be on cloud 9, although isn't it amazing how well that team has performed since they announced that they would not be coming back?
Yes.
I mean, Priest, Berry, Gregson, Briscoe, all of a sudden they're running up front. I did not see that coming. I don't know if you guys did, but
Nope.
I figured once that announcement came, that was going to be the final nail in the coffin of what has been a rather dismal season. And now all of a sudden I see these guys, they're running up front. I can't explain it. When one door closes, another one opens, and it's new opportunity, and it's what you do with that opportunity that's going to determine, your future. And obviously for Chase Briscoe, his future, at least at the moment, is now paved. Where we see Gregson go, don't know. How this all shakes out, don't know. But we always look at it this way: when that first domino falls, others are going to fall after, and how it all shakes out, we'll just all have to wait and stand by, and we'll all see together.
Absolutely. It's going to be fun to pay attention to over the course of the rest of this year. Jeff, enjoy a little bit of time off. I know you'll be all hands on deck this weekend as ARCA heads to Berlin Raceway, but looking forward to reconnecting in Chicago. Please don't bring any of that weather with you, though. We can't afford another one like last year.
No, let's have sunshine, blue sky. Let's let that group enjoy the concerts and the racing and everything that's going to be going on for that weekend. It'll be fun. I look forward to seeing you guys there.
Absolutely. Jeff Striegle, MRN announcer and anchor of the MRN coverage on the NASCAR Cup Series, and, of course, general manager at Berlin Raceway. Appreciate him joining us here on NASCAR Coast to Coast. We still have more business to attend to on the other side of this break. We're going to talk news and notes and, of course, the schedule. Jam-packed full of racing on your menu for this weekend. That's all next here on NASCAR Coast to Coast.
Whelen Engineering, a global leader in the emergency warning industry, designs and manufactures reliable and powerful warning lights, white illumination lighting, sirens, controllers, and warning systems for the automotive, aviation, and mass notification industries worldwide. Whelen products are designed, sourced, and manufactured in America and tested on site to meet the toughest industry standards. Whelen Engineering, manufactured in America for over 70 years. We never left, and we're here to stay.
Welcome back to Coast here on the Motor Racing Network, brought to you by Whelen Engineering. Great conversation with Jeff Striegle. Appreciate his time. Enjoy the weekend off before we go back cup racing with MRN at Chicago next week. Some news and notes. Kyle Dale Jr. getting back again in the late model, going to run part of the Virginia Triple Crown, the Hampton Heat, coming up July 20th on Flow Racing. You can check that out. Obviously, anytime Dale Jr. announces a race he's going to participate in, except near sellout up there at Langley. Butterbean this weekend, Kyle. Expectations for him at Nashville. Back in the truck. We know what he did at Wilkesboro, but Nashville's a whole nother ballgame. What do you expect on the concrete for old Butterbean this weekend?
Yeah, North Wilkesboro was kind of in his element there, a 5/8 mile short track. We'll see what he can do at a 1 3/3 mile high-speed concrete oval. I think, that truck is, and that team, we've seen what Tricon's been able to do this year in the truck series. I think Butterbean is very capable of a let's call it a top 10 effort. If he can qualify well and stay up at the front, clean air so important in those races and knowing how to manage it. And obviously he doesn't have a whole lot of experience doing that, but I think he'll learn quick. And I think the way the field is right now, he definitely is capable of a top 10. Let's call it a top 10 effort for Butterbean Queen.
Yeah, it'll be fun to watch. Can't wait to catch up with Butterbean down in Nashville again on Friday. Motor Racing Network has the coverage for that. And also rescheduled the 45th Governor's Cup at Thunderbolt Speedway up in Barrie, Vermont. I actually saw Dave Moody was going to be a part of the broadcast there. That when they got rained out, unfortunately had to fly home. But they have been rescheduled for that race Thursday, July 11th. And yes, Cole Custer's come out and said, I'm coming back for that. He said, I've always wanted to race this racetrack. He is coming back to the bowl coming up on July 11th. Speaking of what's coming up ahead, ARCA Menard Series at Berlin. We heard Jeff Striegle give us a little bit of a preview, but Kyle, William Sawalich won this race a year ago. He's coming off the win on the road course at Mid-Ohio. Anybody else going to throw their name in the ring to get a win here? Because it's a difficult racetrack to master.
I don't know. I mean, he won at Portland. He won at Mid-Ohio. He won at Berlin last year. Right now, all the odds all the odds that is stacked in his favor. Going to be another great entry list. A lot of drivers heading out to Berlin Raceway this weekend and for the resumption of the ARCA Menard Series season. But they're all going to be chasing, I think, William Sawalich. He's going to be tough to beat.
It's going to be hard for William thinking, man, if I just would have signed up to run the full season, obviously his age, he can't run the big tracks, but I honestly think he could skip Talladega, Daytona, and still probably win the championship with the way he's knocking off these wins. So be curious to see if anybody can tackle William Sawalich again. That race, 8 p.m. Eastern on Flow Racing, and it's tape delayed later that night on FS1. The Virginia Triple Crown, we talked about Langley coming up on July 20th. Well, round 1 is coming up this weekend. Thunder Road Harley-Davidson 200 at Sobo, South Boston Speedway Saturday night. And I tell you what, superstars have aligned in this one because the Hampton Heat, in the Virginia Triple Crown, I should say, brings out everybody because it's kind of the run-up and the big part of the late model season down here in this part of the country. Caden Honeycutt, Isabella Robusto, Timothy Peters, who we typically see at the end of the year running the Valley Star Credit Union 300 at Martinsville. He's in this one. Tate Fogelman, you name it. Of course, all the Cars Tour drivers like Connor Hall and McCaskill are involved as well. Kyle, what is so significant about this race, kind of this three-legged Triple Crown event that goes on each and every year this time of year?
I feel like it's been, the three marquee events for late model racing now for 12 years or however long this has been going on for. That all culminates at the Martinsville Speedway, the biggest stage for late model stock car racing. And that's why 80, 85 cars show up to try to make that event. And we don't quite see those high of car counts at South Boston and Langley, but you'll get 40 to 50 cars, and they're among the very best in late model racing. The payouts are great. Then now streaming coverage has added a new element in recent years where people from around the country can watch these drivers showcase themselves on some of the best short tracks in the South. It has just really blossomed into something special over the last couple of years, and look forward to seeing it get underway from one of my favorite short tracks in the country, South Boston Speedway. And you mentioned Dale Jr. is going to be involved now at Langley. Wouldn't surprise me if he showed up at Martinsville to wrap up the Triple Crown in September.
Why not? He's got a little bit of experience at the paperclip for sure. But yeah, absolutely. When you match up the most iconic racetracks in this part of the country with big payouts, you're going to obviously draw the best race car drivers, and I think it's a notch on your belt if you can go out and win one of these three races coming up on the Virginia Triple Crown schedule. So round number 1 this weekend, we'll see who takes home the Harley-Davidson 200 at South Boston Speedway. Some other events coming up, Kyle, on my schedule. The Battle of Broadway 150, of course, that is teamed up with NASCAR Weekend. Nashville Fairgrounds Speedway, Friday night, the place to be to watch Kevin Harvick get behind the wheel of a KHI number 62 late model. Going to put the fire suit back on, Chase Elliott. But, of course, also a stout field of late model stock drivers like Casey Roderick, who's been blazing through the Southern Super Series slate this year with 6 top 10s and 7 races, including a pair of top 5s. And obviously, when you talk about late model racing, you can't not mention Cole Butcher, Stephen Nasse, and those kind of stalwarts of the sport. So going to be a huge race. Again, Friday, kind of leading into Nashville weekend for NASCAR. And then Cars Tour. Actually, it's going to run on Wednesday. So we've got July 4th weekend, or week, I guess, if you want to call it, coming up next week. So Wednesday, which will be before this episode airs next week, we've got the Caraway race on July 3rd. Connor Hall leading Brendan Queen in the points, Kyle, by 3. Brendan Queen, though, has been on a heater. I expect that maybe to change come next week.
He has ever since North Wilkesboro. I felt like he's got momentum on his side, has a little bit of extra confidence. And you're right. He's been, top 5ing them here the last 6 weeks or so. And we'll see if that momentum continues into their midweek show next week. Kind of weird with the 4th of July falling smack dab in the middle of the week. All these racetracks across the country having special events either before the 4th or right after the 4th. And, it makes it fun for those that have, the week off or took the week off for vacation. You can tune in the evening, and usually there's probably going to be a race streaming from somewhere across the country because of how the holiday falls.
Absolutely. Pro late models are there as well. Spencer Davis, Caden Honeycutt, and Kyle Campbell all separated by 8 points. So that championship ultimately tight as well. All right, Kyle, before we let everybody go, first off, what's the New England racing schedule look like? I know Stafford, I assume, is in action on Friday. Unfortunately, you will be with us with the Motor Racing Network, but what else is going on?
Yeah, we got the Monaco Modified Tri-Track Series in action up here in this part of the country this weekend. They were supposed to race Wednesday night as we tape it, but guess what? It's going to rain. So they have moved it to Thursday night. So what would be tonight for those watching on Thursday, the Monaco Modified Tri-Track Series, one of the touring series up here, and all the big names will be there, including Matt Hirschman, who has dominated many of the races of that tour over the last several years, a multi-time champion. So they'll run on Thursday night. And then we're in action here on Friday night with a special street stock event and we kick off the 4th of July early with fireworks here
Nice.
on Friday night. Kids always love it. One of the best crowds of the year here at the racetrack that doesn't involve an open modified tour type of an event. So should be fun on Friday night.
Kyle and fireworks. Something doesn't mix
Love
there.
it.
Just don't burn yourself. Do you have a driver of the week this week before we go?
I do. I'm going to stick up here in the Northeast, and a lot of eyes were on Justin Bonsignore this past weekend. Was able to pick up the NASCAR Wheel and Modified Tour win in dramatic style. Did well in the NASCAR Xfinity Series, finishing in the top 10 in both of the first 2 stages before the restart incident. No practice, no qualifying, never been in the car before. Granted, it was Joe Gibbs equipment, but still, those cars drive much different than what he's used to in an open wheel modified. The weight is different. The rubber on the racetrack is different. Everything is completely different, and was able to manage a pretty good run, at least in the first 180 laps of that event.
100%. I will get behind you on that. Thank you, Kyle Rickey, for our driver of the week. Don't forget Motor Racing Network on the air Friday night. It's a lonely one-off for us. The Truck Series battle Nashville Super Speedway on the concrete, the 1 1/3 mile oval. Coming up Friday night, it's the Rackley Roofing 200 MRN on the air, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Kyle Rickey, myself will be down there battling 90-degree temperatures on Friday night. So hopefully you stay hydrated. Kyle, looking forward to seeing you as always. For our producer, Pat Jaggers, and of course, Kyle Rickey, my name is Chris Wilner. Thank you so much for tuning into this week's episode of NASCAR Coast to Coast, brought to you by Whelen Engineering, manufactured in America for over 70 years. Whelen Engineering. Have a good one, everybody, and we'll see you next week.